I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the lands I'm speaking to you from today. And I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians across the lands where all of you are joining us from as well. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to be speaking to the winner of the Leadership Through Lived Experience Award, John Harper. Hi, John. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. And it's all a pleasure, actually. I just hope you're not too excited and you can stay seated. But
I might not be able to be honest. I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about your work. To start us off, you're a very passionate mental health advocate. What got you started in that work?
Like most advocates, I suppose it comes from lived experience and working out how to go on with life, I suppose. So my advocacy is one of the strategies I use to deal with my mental health issues, namely depression. And that's what it's about. I mean, to a certain extent, it gets a little bit embarrassing getting awards and that, because I suppose initially why I got into this work was about self-preservation. But over a period of time, and even today, I'm still learning. So I've been in advocacy since 2006, and I'm still learning how fulfilling it is, how rewarding it is in helping somebody else. And there always seems to be somebody worse off than you. So, yeah, very simply.
Yeah, that's really interesting that it came from, like you said, a place of self-preservation initially. Have others come into the work similarly through you?
Yeah, there's all interactions. So I suppose what happened, like most stories, it's very similar in that when I had my depression, I isolated and withdrawn. And while I did end up going to the GP and stuff like that, when I reflected on my recovery, it was because of the actions of others, the reaching out of, closer to hand was my wife and my children even. But then it was mates and community and football clubs. So, and all of those things I'm very passionate about. So that's why it's flowed over into the advocacy stuff. And imparting that, I just so happen to be quite, this sounds like, self whatever, but I happen to have some leadership skills. So, I was a first grade football coach at a young age at 21 and often captain or leader at different things. And at the time, I didn't realize it. It wasn't until after I had depression that I realized the value of these qualities. And so I started off when I had a neighbour's wife pull me up. And she told me about a husband who happened to have the same symptoms that I had when I first went in. And I decided, no way, he's a mate of mine. No way he's going to go through pardon the language, the shit that I went through, and I would do whatever. And that's what I did. And it gradually built, and it was the same through teams. So most of the people that I suppose I have influenced have those base skills already in there, whether it's in regards to team sport, whether it's just as a natural community leader. It's about having the confidence to use those qualities. And I mean, as we go on and have this discussion, you'll tell that I'm stubborn, I'm pig-headed, I think I'm right. They're all the qualities that keep you going. They're not necessarily all good qualities, but in this instance, in regards to mental health, that pig-headedness and everything else is very good in achieving results. And the people that I mix with are as passionate as I am, and to a certain degree, they're often as pig-headed and stubborn, and, you know, we think we've got it right. And that's the beauty of recognitions like this award, is that they validate us. They give us strength in believing we're doing right. Yeah. And that's something to be passionate about. If you think you're right, far out, go with it.
Very much so. And you do a lot of incredible work, including a lot of volunteering with things such as rural outreach counselling, Murrumbidgee Primary Health. Can you tell us about the volunteer work that you do with them?
All my work is volunteer. So when I first started, I did, and it was because I had to make a living, my family. It so happens that I'm in a reasonable position that I don't, and I understand that some people have got to make a living from it. I was fearful that if I got paid, I'd do it for the money and not for the message. So, I mean, that's where I'm passionate. I'm passionate about the give part. So all of the volunteering is really, it's not volunteering actually, it's just supporting positive people. So I go wherever there are positive people, and I try and support them. So as I said, you will talk with Butch Young. He's an employed person in mental health, peer support worker, but I'll support him because he actually goes outside and does really positive things. People like rural outreach counselling, I do the same. There's Lifeboat Southeast, which is in South Australia. There's Tie Up the Black Dog in Queensland. There's places like Narromine that have got good groups, Merriwar, and we try and do that. I mean, many years ago, probably 6 years ago, I started up a forum of suicide prevention groups come together, and we got 15 to talk about what were the things we were doing right and the things we were doing wrong. And worst of luck, it fell over because some of the bigger mental health organisations stepped in and basically got to tell us what to do. Whereas most volunteers, as I said, we're pig-headed and stubborn. We know what we're doing. And we just wanted to get that out. So, yeah, and that's what I found. So I've been working at all different levels, at community level with things like rural outreach counselling, Open Minds, Brighter Futures, a group in Temora that's just a community support group. Then I start working in organisations or charitable stuff. You know, I get tied up with RAW in Tasmania, groups like that at a state level. So I'm on an advisory committee with the LHAC, that's the local health advisory thing with the hospitals. And then the PHN, which is federal government, which is Wagga, and I'm on a fire advisory committee and stuff as mental health. But then I've done things like represented Suicide Prevention Australia at Senate hearing, was asked to be an advisor on the National Drought Task Force. And some of this stuff is really important to you people out there who are listening to this, is that when I was asked, say, to go on the Drought Task Force, I sent back a missive to Major General Stephen Day saying I couldn't see what the point is, what we would achieve having an ordinary bloke like me having input to such a highfalutin bit of gear, and I wouldn't be involved. And to his credit, he drove out from Canberra to see me, come out to the farm to pick my brains. And he came out in his uniform and all his attaches, and we talked all day, and I introduced him to a few people that were grassroots people. And when he left, he gave me a big hug and he said, "Will you join us?" And I said, "No, it hasn't changed." Anyway, that night, the ordinary people that he'd introduced and my wife said, "No, we think he's a decent bloke. He's absolutely going to try and do something positive in regards to mental health, in regards to drought." So I wrote that letter and said about I didn't see the point of it. Anyway, I went through all of that process, and in some of the determinations, they sent me papers to read. They took on board the advice. And all I can say is that while any of us can get upset with the big organisations, with government, whatever else, in all of those organisations, there's good people such as yourself. And, you know, we've got to support positive people wherever they are. Okay. And I just think that we all have, us little people, have a role to play. And I think the biggest downfall we have in Australia is that the majority of people are quiet. They don't speak up. And the majority support awards like this. They support organisations like Way Ahead, all of that, but we don't speak up. All we hear is the random minorities, and they divert some of the goodness that we're trying to do. So I am involved in all of that stuff, but it's more about supporting positive people, because I think we've been sucked down with negativity, our society and community, and it's time to turn that around. And, you know, while I must admit that 90% of you people out there aren't going directly at the answer like I would like, because I'm stubborn, pig-headed, and I know what I'm talking about, I'm quite happy to deviate a bit because we're still heading in the right direction. And I suppose that would be the biggest thing in volunteering, anybody in volunteering, is that often you mightn't be going directly where you want to go. But I think as long as we're heading upwards or positively, then get into it, get right into it.
Wonderful. And speaking of positivity, obviously, you know, we do hear things about, you know, drought and bushfires, and you focus your work with rural communities. What are some of the best positive aspects of working in rural communities?
Well, the best thing I like about rural communities and rural and remote, it's just straight talking. We call a spade a spade. Yeah, you can get away with all sorts of things, and sometimes that makes the messaging better and warmer. The people in the bush, I would say, tend to be warmer. You know, the messaging is right. And the beauty for me in particular is, I mean, look at me, I'm a rough nut. You can hear it from me talking, whatever else. And that's the people I'm connecting with. So I'm comfortable there. That's what I like about it. And there's all this interconnection that we talked about prior to this conversation about, you know, how different people are linked all over, you know, and that's what we tend to find, is that people will call me that have been told by somebody else who happens to be a third cousin of my wife, you know, that we never even knew that branch of the family existed, you know. So there's all that sort of stuff. And, you know, things like we did a job many years ago south of Broken Hill. So between Broken Hill and, God, I can't even think of the name of the place there, Western Mildura. But anyway, it was on the South Australian border. There was a 70K road down, and I think there was 6 families or 4 families lived on that road on 70Ks out in the donga, in the bush. Racecourse there, we had 300 people turn up, 300. And we had some councillors and stuff from Sydney out, and they were horrified because we're doing talks at night. This is outside of business hours. See, in the bush, you do it when it suits the people, not when it's business hours. And we had big blokes. We were around the fire buckets and stuff talking after we did a bit of a talk. And we have big blokes off to the side, and they're sooking, telling their stories, unloading, dumping, venting on councillors there. The rest of us are here, we're all talking. We're not really paying any attention to those people. We know they're there, okay, because things happen. That bloke would come in and he'd be all sooky-eyed, a bit like me, like that, you know, and he'd have a beer or whatever else, then somebody else would go over there. People in the bush understand about mental health and mental well-being and the need to dump and to vent. And a lot of times our issue comes because our society has changed and we want people to be the best they can. We've tried to make people individuals. You've got to be the best, you know, and it's not about family and not about community. And that's an issue. So family and community are still strong in the bush, although people like me, who've got a bit of age on us now, can see how that is waning. So as I said, the further west you go, it seems to be still stronger. So the challenge for us is to bring that back through to the east. You know, I'm an Australian Day ambassador, and I think there's something like, I don't know what there is, 106 ambassadors. There's only about 6 or 8 of us actually come west of the Great Divide. And nearly all of the ambassadors want to get bush ones. They love it. They say the people are real, you know, and that's true. And that's real in regards to mental health issues, you know, and we crumble and feel it bad because we've lost the connections that we used to have.
When we were speaking to Newcastle Football, they actually brought up a really great point of meeting people where they're at rather than making them come to you physically or emotionally. And it sounds like the work that you do is very much about that. It's meeting people where they are, you know, yes, in the actual locations where they are, but, you know, finding the language, the style, the, you know, sort of culture that is where they are. So you have that common ground to start with.
There's a couple of things why I'm really passionate about it. And it comes back probably to 2 main reasons. One is that you have to present for mental health issues. You've got to actually, and to do that, you've got to be in crisis to be seen. So out here, it can be 6, 12 weeks before you get seen. And then you've got to be in crisis. And even if you're in a crisis, it can still be 6 weeks. So you've got to present, okay? And what's the first symptom of poor mental health? Isolation, withdrawal, you know? So there's that issue. And what you said about reaching out, going out, that's what we're about. So presenting, and then they tell us that there's 60% or over 60% of people that could be diagnosed with depression don't present. So there's a hell of a lot of buggers out there that go through all sorts of misery and stuff, not just suicides, but broken marriages, loss of their family farm, all sorts of things, you know, all of that misery because they don't present. We've got to change that. But I understand that the business plan is such, that's what's got to happen. And that is about meeting KPIs, money and time. You know, they've got to be transformed. Even the politicians want us to be able to do that. But we know that with mental health and with nursing, indeed, it's about care. And fair dinkum care isn't about money or about time. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate. And the other one is the messaging. So, for instance, I get a lot of feedback that people like how I present and talk because it's at their level. And the reason that they don't particularly like some of these other big organisations is that they use qualified people. So then they use, is it acronyms, you know, the letters and stuff like that to deliver their message. So that's why I'm passionate. I'm pretty sure that the presentation method, while I understand the business sense, is not going to tick the box for mental health issues. And the other one is the messaging. I'm pretty damn sure the messaging is wrong.
You've had a lot of messaging success with your podcast, Mate Helping Mate. And on the podcast, people share stories, challenges, and other difficulties from their lives, and that can be really vulnerable. What do you do to create? And having just chatting with you now, I can kind of see the answer to the question already, but how do you create a sense of safety so people can share those stories that, you know, make them feel vulnerable?
Oh, it's all the terms, you know, the political correct terms they talk about. It's about empowerment. It's about making them feel valued. It's all of that stuff. But I don't know. It might be because I'm so passionate about it. I'm fair dinkum, and most of these people that I get, I know, even people that I haven't met, but I know have lived experience, I know that there's a positive story, strategy, whatever there that may just help somebody else. So, yeah, I don't know. I suppose one of the things I learnt with mental health, so to maintain good well-being, good mental well-being in particular, you need faith and hope. So they're all elements up here. Okay. And this goes back to what we term as a religious saying, and I'm not particularly religious. I believe in God, but some of the other stuff I'm not so fussed. But the saying is faith, hope, and we say love now. We've even changed it in modern terms. But originally, the term, whatever the sentence was faith, hope, and charity. And most of us think charity is giving money. But the original definition is give of yourself. And that's what I find works. In whatever I do, if I give of myself, fair dinkumly give a bit of myself to what I'm doing, then it instills faith and hope in the people I'm dealing with, in moving forward, and in myself indeed. So, I mean, to me, it's quite simple. The podcast and stuff, this is interesting. It's like this conversation, Zoom. I hate this crap, I can see you're a warm, nice person, but I much prefer to meet you in person. I find IT and stuff as cold. There's no warmth, what I've talked about, warmth in the conversation. So it's interesting that some of the successes I've had have come through IT. I didn't know what the hell a podcast was until I actually started doing them, which was 18 months ago or so. So, a girl similar to our producer had an issue in her family, and she believed my messaging would connect with her brother. And he was working on a tractor doing hours and hours, wouldn't get to workshops or anything else. So she said, podcast. And I can't get over how well they've been received. But before that, I was involved with animations. And that came from a university student who was doing media and artistic sort of stuff. And she wanted to know, was it all right to do an animation about mate helping mate? And it ended up being a sheep sticking its head through the thing and the farmer helping out. But it had the context of reaching out and helping others. The podcast, I suppose, was I thought it would get to all the bush people. I should have gone up to have a look at it, but I know at one stage, so this was last year, probably ages, I don't tend to look at that kind of crap much. I like feedback. I like people tell me. But we had something like around 10,000 hits. And you'd think that they'd all be from the bush. I'm a bush bloke. But more than 50% were from the big centres, Sydney, Melbourne, whatever. And that really, it doesn't bug me because I kind of semi-worked out what it is. It's that connection, is that there's a stack of people in the city that have connected. So I have cousins, whatever else, in Sydney, and other people do as well. So, I found that quite intriguing, I suppose. And then we actually got calls from different people, from the city and that, and wanting to talk about just basic stuff. It was, it's quite mind-blowing what you can achieve. So I'm a little bloke and I've had a little bit more openness or, to IT and stuff like that. And I'm not an expert, I'm bloody hopeless at it. But it just shows you, as I said, what everyday ordinary people can achieve in this space if they actually, talk about it, open up, which is what you're trying to do here with Way Ahead and these awards. Yeah.
Thank you. I love the undercurrent of positivity with everything that you're saying. And to me, the Leadership Through Lived Experience Award is really about that, taking your own experiences and finding ways to make the world better from that adversary. So thank you, John, and absolutely congratulations. It's been so wonderful to have a chat with you today.
You know, the beauty with awards like this, there's two folds for this one, particularly the Way Ahead. Okay. And generally I see them as that they're great because they validate my thinking and what I'm doing. So they give me, so I'm out there supporting positive people, because what happens is that positively drains away with all the negative people and willing to criticize, it drains away. Well, I'm no different. Yeah, I ain't an ever ready rabbit, bunny or battery or whatever it is. I need charging, and I need it from organisations, people like you. And these awards are ways of doing that. You know, where I am in my present life at the moment, I dearly love these awards to go to some of the people that I work with that I know. And I was really tickled pink that some of those were recognised in your awards. So ones like the Fire Shed Friday achievement, Louise Horsley was a highly commended or something, and the Regenerate one, which is the artwork in Tumbarumba. See, these people, they're the ones that I really like to keep them going and keep them humming. And the other thing that I like about it, and I've been to a certain extent pushing for a while, is that I like the fact that Way Ahead is combined with the Mental Health Commission, which is basically a government department, I suppose. I don't know what the correct term is, but it's about the government recognising the little people, you know, and all too often we tend to pick out the tall poppies. So, you know, and I say more power to Way Ahead, keep these, you know, awards going, and, you know, I'll definitely try and nominate some of these other people, because, yes, you know, none of them actually do it for the pat on the head. They all do it for the right reason. They all do it from the heart, whatever. So thank you very much.
Thank you again, John. It's been wonderful to chat with you. Thank you everyone for watching today. You can find links to the Mate Helping Mate podcast in the chat and comments, and join us. Tomorrow's chat will be hosted by Stephanie Thompson, who is the lead of the Way Ahead Workplaces program. She'll be chatting with this year's Way Ahead Workplaces Wellbeing Award Legal Aid. Make sure you tune in to hear more about their incredible work. Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.